So let's talk about what's going on in the world here, because I'm worried about Texas,
Yeah.
but actually more so than that, I'm worried about what's happening around the country. And I believe that MAGA or the Republicans are trying to steal elections, to disenfranchise mainly Black voters, but disenfranchise all of us, the democratic process, I believe, and institutions. And, we've got the Epstein of it all that's still out there, that he has, Epstein derangement syndrome. And what else do we? Oh, and then Washington, D.C. So
Yeah.
where do we start?
You want to start with DC? That feels like the biggest issue. I mean, I put out a piece earlier today on Substack about it. People can find it on Endless Urgency if you want to read it. But my
By the
view
way,
of this
smash the
is,
hearts and like and
yeah,
subscribe. But yeah, go on. What were you saying?
yeah, please do that. Also, tell us where you're watching from to get the comments flowing.
Yeah.
Let us know what you want us to talk about. But with this DC thing, I largely think it's a stunt. I think it's very similar to what he did in LA, where he sent the National Guard and Marines down with zero interest in them actually doing anything. Most of them were just standing around. The FBI agents that are patrolling the streets of DC are not doing what functionally their job should be, which is investigating federal crimes. So they're not going after drug traffickers, sex traffickers, not going after cyber criminals or anything like that, counterterrorism, like my dad used to work on, amongst other things. So to me, it's just another like attempt to distract from Epstein and distract from the economy. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they knew how bad the economic numbers were going to be yesterday. Core inflation's up to 3.1%, which is the highest it's been in quite a while. And people are pretty pissed off. So I think they wanted to do something to distract. I think Trump is trying to do that with inviting Putin to Alaska too. I think he's just taking wild swings and trying to get off of what is the two most damaging stories of his presidency, which is the economy and Epstein.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but unfortunately, it has real, real effect, a real worldwide effect and implications from what he's doing. It may just be a
Yeah.
game to him. It may be just a distraction to him. But if they achieve what they want to do in Texas, which we'll talk about, or if they continue to do to Democratic cities, I know DC is not a city, it's a district. If they continue to do that, that has real world implications, especially for our election or electoral process.
Yeah.
And that's concerning. That should be concerning for everyone.
Well, this arms race on redistricting is really dangerous. And let's zoom out real quick. Like, gerrymandering is horrible and it should be outlawed, period. I think, like, remember the last time when Democrats had control of the House, we passed a bill in the House to outlaw gerrymandering, and not a single Republican voted for it. Every Democrat voted for it. So you can blame Democrats for gerrymandering in certain states, but we're the ones who want to get rid of it, and Republicans are the ones that want to abuse this halfway through. And the point that I would make here is, they were fine with these maps in 2022. They were fine with these maps in 2024 because the polling showed that they would win. They won the midterms in 2020 slightly. They won the presidential election in 24 slightly. But now they're seeing the same polls that I'm seeing, which shows Donald Trump is super unpopular. His popularity is probably low 40s, high 30s at best. He's dragging down Republican candidates. The Republican budget is not popular. People really hate this thing. They don't like kicking 20 million Americans off their health care. They don't like kicking kids off food assistance. They don't like giving tax cuts to billionaires. They don't like that the deficit is ballooning again under Donald Trump. So if they thought they were popular, if they thought that Donald Trump was delivering for the American people, that people liked what the Republican Party was doing, they wouldn't be trying to change the rules halfway through. And they already have a 15-seat advantage in redistricting, period. So Democrats have to do 15 seats better than the national average across the country to win the House already, which we do because we're only back by 3 seats right now. They want to add 10. They want to squeeze out another 5 out of Texas. They want to squeeze another 5 out of other states, which California and New York can block. And I think California will move forward if Texas does, for sure. New York, I'm a little bit hesitant on. I don't know if they'll move forward or not. But ultimately, it's just bad for our democracy. Like, if you start rewriting the rules halfway through the game, you're not going to trust anybody in it. And it's a race to the bottom.
Yeah, but they're not trying to hide it. They're trying to justify it by, in my estimation, lying about what Democrats are doing or what Democrats have done when clearly the facts and the history don't really show that. When I listen to, Greg Abbott, every time I have a panel of folks on and Greg Abbott says something, without fail, after I finish a soundbite, everyone on the panel goes, "That's bullshit. That's a lie." Right. Yeah. And, from Republicans to centrists or to liberals or to independents, they all say, "That's a lie." Greg Abbott has gotten his marching orders from Donald Trump, and he is trying to live up to those marching orders, or at least trying to, obtain what Donald Trump wants. There is no justification for what they're doing. And if they want to do it, why can't they wait for a census year like what historically has happened all along?
Well, not only that, they're arguing that the last census was rigged, and it was rigged to include people who were here illegally. It was rigged to include, like to the advantage of the Democrats. But keep in mind, you know who was president when the last census was conducted? Donald Trump.
Yeah.
The last time we did redistricting, Donald Trump was president of the United States. Republicans were in control of Washington. So they're changing the rules midway through the game, which tells you how politically weak that they are. And I think the same distraction game that we talked about earlier, where this week they're talking about crime in Washington, D.C. and other major Democratic cities. Last week, it was all about Sydney Sweeney's jeans. So they're just trying to change the subject, and they're oscillating wildly from thing to thing. They don't have a record to stand on. Their biggest legislative accomplishment is the Republican budget, which is a disaster and people hate it. Donald Trump has not made good on most of the major promises he's put together outside of what he promised the far right.
That's the point right there. Donald Trump knows that his policies are they're ass, right? He knows that they're trash. And so he knows that they're not very popular with most of the American people. I mean, the MAGA, his core group, I don't think there's anything that he could do that will turn them off.
Well, with the exception of Epstein. Epstein is really the first moment where he starts to lose.
Yeah.
Sorry, take it.
No, that's okay. So I think that he knows that the policies are bad. And when it comes when it comes time for people to go vote, especially with the upcoming midterms, he's afraid that he's going to lose big league, right?
Yeah.
He's afraid of that. So he's trying to rig the system so that he can win the midterms, because if he doesn't, he's just a lame duck president. And that's something he does not want. He wants to be a strong man. He wants to be a dictator. And also, I believe in some way, obviously it's to rig, but in some way for him to be, not in some way, in many ways, it's for him to be in charge, at least, as far as law enforcement, and who knows where that can lead to in these big Democratic cities or big blue places, so that if there's any way to manipulate that vote, he will have every opportunity to do so. Do you think I'm wrong about that?
No, he's going to use the power of the federal government to try to rig the next election. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be a free and fair election. There'll for sure be a free election. Whether or not it'll be fair, I don't know. I mean, they're staffing the federal government with cronies at every level. They're going to abuse their powers, and they're going to meddle in this stuff. And the good news is, and I think in the distribution of power in the government, like states run their elections, local municipalities run their elections. So the good news is there's county boards all across the country that I think will prevent them from being able to do this. But what they will do is in close races, they will be able to potentially tip the scale when things are close. The good news beyond that, though, is, again, he's really unpopular and he's not offering anything to anybody. He's not out there explaining why the tariffs are good for the American people. He's not out there extolling the virtues of the Republican budget. He doesn't have anything to run on. The strategic advantage that Democrats have in any midterm election is that our coalition is a high propensity coalition, which means that people who vote in every election tend to vote more Democratic than people who vote in just every presidential election. So we have a disadvantage right now in presidential years and an advantage in midterm years, even though the Democratic Party is generally unpopular. Layer on top of that, Donald Trump's approval rating is low. We have an advantage on the generic ballot, and Democrats are landing every major recruit that they expect. There's rumors now that Sherrod Brown is going to jump into the Ohio Senate race. There's a bunch of other really great candidates that I know that are getting in. We got Roy Cooper in the North Carolina Senate race. We've got a legitimate opportunity here to put up a real fight. And I would say we're probably the favorites to win the House right now, which is why they're redistricting. Senate is tough because the map is tough, but we're in a good spot. And if Republicans continue to crash the economy, more people are going to turn to us, because the natural instinct of the American people is to have divided government, even if I don't always agree with that instinct. But in this case, I do. I think we're in a good spot, and that's why they're going to try to cheat.
I like to talk about Epstein derangement syndrome. You believe that this is all part of his Epstein derangement syndrome?
Not redistricting. I think they were cooking this up for quite a while. I think the redistricting stuff, sure, it helps. I mean, the fear with Epstein is it's doing two things. It's depressing his base and it's firing up the Democratic base. On the depression of his base, Donald Trump gave a ton of people in America who believed in wild conspiracy theories a political home in the Republican Party that they'd never had before. And when you do that, I don't know what percentage of Donald Trump's coalition is the QAnon movement, let's say, but it's not insignificant. And if those folks go, I thought there was a cabal of people who were preying on children, who were taking advantage of it, and Donald Trump promised he was going to expose that. And now I find out that Donald Trump is a part of that and refuses to release the Epstein files as he promised. those people might take their ball and go home. And if they do that, it makes it harder for this version of the Republican Party to win elections, which will then moderate the Republican Party in the long term and ruin Donald Trump's legacy. So that's one. On the second piece, it's firing up Democratic voters in a way that I haven't seen. It's pissing off independent voters in a way that we haven't seen in Donald Trump's second term. So to me, it's a double-edged sword for them, where their political opponents who have been depressed because we lost, because we're frustrated with our leaders, because we don't have a face of the Democratic Party, and we're mad, I think, collectively as a group at the way the party's handled things over the last couple of years, now has a rallying cry around Epstein, and then his base is depressed. That's the perfect storm, plus the economy, to where you could have a wave election. I'm not promising that there would be a wave election, but the conditions are there for it, which is why they're trying to change the rules.
Support comes from ZBiotics. I have to tell you about this game-changing product I use before a night out with drinks. It is called Pre-Alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic invented by PhD scientists to tackle those rough mornings after drinking. Here's the science, okay? When you drink, your body converts alcohol into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's the buildup of that byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for feeling off the next day. So ZBiotics creates an enzyme that helps break that byproduct down. I first tried pre-alcohol at a friend's birthday dinner. I knew it was going to be one of those nights. Great food, a couple of my favorite cocktails, wine, whatever. Plenty of toast. So I made pre-alcohol my first drink of the night, and the next morning I was up early, clear-headed, and still made it to work. It really does what it says it's going to do. And with the final days of summer here, you want to enjoy them. Whether you're headed to the beach, whether you're camping, you're sneaking in one last road trip, don't waste a single morning. Bring ZBiotics with you, drink it before alcohol, and enjoy every day to the fullest. So go to zbiotics.com/lemondrops to learn more and get 15% off of your first order when you use the code LEMONDROPS at checkout. And here's the best part. ZBiotics is backed by a 100% money-back guarantee. If you're not satisfied for any reason, they're going to refund you, no questions asked. That is zbiotics.com/lemondrops, code word lemondrops for 15% off. Try it, and you're going to thank yourself in the morning.
I want to veer up a little bit, and I want to talk about the Democrats. I don't want to beat up on the Democrats, but I do want to talk. You said you don't have Democratic candidates who what? Say that again. I want to be crystal clear about it.
Well, I was saying that I think people are just frustrated with our leadership. We have a lot of really good Democratic candidates running in this election, in my opinion.
You think they okay. So here's the thing for me. I see a lot of candidates. I'm concerned about those candidates because even the folks who people deemed as authentic and whatever are now, to me, can I just be honest with you?
Yeah, of course.
They're giving poll-tested McKinsey consultant candidate.
Can you be specific?
And I don't want to do that right now.
Okay.
But I'm just saying, and for some reason, their authenticity layer or sheen is wearing thin for me, because I think people are thinking, and I know they are because I've spoken to people, well, if this person runs, they've got to appeal to this, and if this person runs, they've got to appeal to this, and they've got to get to the Midwest, and they've got to get to the moderate, and they've got to get, and I'm like,
yeah. Well,
I think it's time to lean into the progressive side of the party, which is where the energy is, to younger people. I know that New York City is unique, but I think the Mamdani example should be a lesson to people. At least they should be looking at it. Is that people, I say the pendulum, when you have something that's so extreme, the pendulum does go from something that's extreme, it just doesn't go halfway.
Yeah.
It's gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's just pure physics. And I think that people are looking for authenticity, not fake authenticity, not being all things to all people. So someone who has the balls, or whatever the female equivalent of that is, thing, to be able to just say Donald Trump's a piece of shit. His policies are crap. This is what the country should be doing. I'm not a progressive, but I understand. I have enough intelligence to understand that progressive policies and ideas work. Who doesn't want universal health care? Who doesn't want to be able to feed their families or have a decent salary, a minimum wage standard in this country? Who doesn't want to be able to be safe as they walk around as a citizen, whether that's safe from crime on the random street crime or whatever it is, and also from members of the military who are out on the streets because of a Donald Trump executive order or edict. You know where I'm going?
Particularly trans service members who had their retirement benefits taken away from them, which is awkward.
Yeah.
So I disagree with you slightly, only to say that I think this moment is not about ideological purity or we're swinging to the progressive movement or we're swinging to the moderate wing of the Democratic Party. Like, I don't give a shit about ideology right now. I do care about, like you said, balls. I would say fire in the belly. Who's got some real fire in the belly and who's going to use and leverage the power of the federal government to move this country forward? Because what Trump has done is used every bit of power at his disposal to destroy and to steal from the American people. That's all that he has done. He has not built or created anything that has made anybody's life better than it was before. Nobody out there, except for a handful of billionaires, are closer to being able to retire with dignity, start a family, buy a house, do the basic shit that he understood during the campaign they were struggling with. They're worse off than they were 6 months ago. So with Mamdani has a series of policies. They're very to the left. They're very DSA. I'm not attacking them. Some of them are good ideas. Some are things that I'm not comfortable with. But what he did well was he listened to people. He centered their concerns in his campaign, and he was laser focused on them. He didn't take any of the dumbass bait from the media or the Cuomo campaign or the Republicans or Donald Trump or anybody else. If he does that in the general election, which he is doing, he will win. But it really isn't all
you're making my point.
Yeah.
I think you're 100% accurate about that. But I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
but the whole thing, the whole idea of like, do we like his policies? Do we not? That happens with every candidate, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, do I like? And we don't. When people say, "Oh, none of it's worked," he hasn't done anything. We don't know. Donald Trump's policies aren't working, and people gave him and are still giving him the benefit of the doubt. And so I just think that people want something different, and I think many people. He's saying at least what they want to hear, and whether his policies work or not, honestly, I don't think it matters that much. I think that is different. They would like it, and they would just like having those conversations out there in the zeitgeist, so at least we can start to attack them and see if they really are feasible or not.
Well, I think people are willing to take risks. Like 80% of Americans are struggling right now, and they're going to take a risk on a politician who seems like they give a shit about them and seems like they have some fresh ideas. So when you're talking about establishment candidates, and there are lots of establishment candidates in the Republican Party and the Democratic Party who don't have any new ideas, who don't have any new ways to package or communicate them, and don't have a proven record of getting shit done. So if you're somebody in the Democratic Party and you're frustrated that somebody all the way to the left and Mamdani won that primary, why the fuck didn't you run a candidate who could beat Mamdani in the primary? Like, that's the answer. If you rallied behind Andrew Cuomo, who is an abusive predator and frankly, one of the lamest politicians in America right now, like his social media is some of the cringiest shit I've seen in my career. Don't get behind bad candidates. Be willing to offer people a vision. I think you can offer people a big vision of the future that isn't solely rooted in the Mamdani wing of the party. There's plenty of good ideas. We talk a lot about them on my show. In particular, I spent a lot of time talking about like forgiving medical debt and how we can increase people's wages and how we can, reduce their cash outflows enough to buy a house. Like, there's plenty of good opportunities for that. In my view, I'm gonna borrow from the Joe Walshes of the world, and I'm gonna borrow from the Zohran Mamdanis of the world, and I'm gonna get done what I can. But people take a risk on Trump because they don't trust the establishment and they want to blow shit up. And they're hopeful that maybe he'll help them. He's not. Bad news. Zohran, I think, will try. Whether or not he'll be successful when he's mayor, I don't know. But people are going to take a risk. So if the establishments in the party or the moderate wings of both parties want to get one hand back on the wheel in 2028 and in 2026 for the primaries, they're going to need to offer people something new. And they're going to have a good message and a better communicator and a good series of policies that people can get behind and are clearly articulated. And if they don't do that, then we're going to have Jon Stewart win the Democratic primary. We're going to have Tucker Carlson win the Republican primary, because if the best the Republicans can offer up is Ted Cruz and J.D. Vance in the next election, they're going to get beat, in my opinion.
So what do the candidates need better answers on? I find that they need better answers on affordability, obviously, right? Which
100%.
is something that's huge here in New York City and really across the country. And that's something that Mamdani capitalized on. And also, I think Israel and Gaza, better answers, and not just like sort of, well, both sides, false equivalency, whatever that means, but a sharp tone on here's what we need to do, and what's right and what's wrong about that, and what is the solution. I think that so what do you think they need better answers?
So I'm gonna set Israel and Palestine to the side for a second. Not because it's not important. I just think its own bucket of stuff, and it moves while it's an important conversation, it moves so few voters relative to the total number of people. So I'm going to focus on the core of what I think
it moved a lot of young people though here in New York, and I'm wondering if that has repercussions around the country. But yeah.
It did, but not nearly. For every one person it moved, I think like 5 were moved on inflation. So that's just the way I would put it. Is like 80% of the problem for the Democrats the last election was still inflation, and then the rest of it, which I would just call a bucket of trivia, was like culture, Israel, and like Joe Biden's health and age. Which again, not unimportant, but I'm just going to separate it out for a second, which is to say, Democrats have to come up with a clear series of agenda, a clear series of things that cover basically 3 things. It's going to be affordability, it's going to be healthcare, and it's going to be safety. And I would throw, if I'm throwing a 4th in there, it would be corruption in there as well. Because all the polling that I've seen shows that people believe both political parties are corrupt. I saw polling this week that suggested that people think the Democratic Party is more corrupt than the Republican Party, which is fucking ridiculous, and is representative of the Democratic Party not cleaning its own house in terms of some of the corruption that we do have in our party. And I think we need to do that. But we need to articulate, how are we going to help people buy a house when they don't believe they can have one? That is core to the American dream. How are we going to make sure that people can live the life that they want and have a family when they want to? And I think, Pete Buttigieg did a great job articulating this on the Andrew Schultz show a few months ago, where he talked about what your ideal day should look like and how the government should play a role in improving your day. And I think we need more stuff like that. I have a couple of my candidates I think do a really good job of that. Jocelyn Benson does a really good job of that. Mallory McMorrow is another one that I talk about all the time. On healthcare, I think we need to figure out how we answer a number of different questions while making sure that people get the coverage that they need, and that we're covering the things that they need, and making sure that people aren't going bankrupt when they get sick, and not just as a talking point, but actually fucking deliver something for those people, because the medical debt that millions of Americans are racking up right now is going to destroy their lives. On safety, which is really about the border and is about crime, Democrats are constantly caught flat-footed on this. So how do we talk about securing our borders? How do we talk about making sure that all cities are safe, big or small? How do we reframe the debate? Violent crime is falling in major Democratic cities right now. It's been falling over the last couple of years. How do we message on that so that people believe that and believe that we're going to keep them safe, after frankly failing them on the border? And you can feel like we didn't fail them on the border, but the polling shows that most Americans feel like we did. So those are the things that we have to answer and push out all the trivia and shit. I don't want to talk about culture. I don't want to talk about Sydney Sweeney's jeans. I don't want to talk about whatever dumbass thing the right wing is talking about. I want to see every Democratic candidate be as laser focused on the main core issues as Zohran Mamdani was. And anybody who gets in the way of that needs to get out of the tent, because we're not going to be focused on social issues in the future. Or it's not social issues in the future, sorry. I mean culture shit in the future. Because there's plenty of things on social issues that are incredibly important, especially with like Republicans attacking gay marriage in the Supreme Court. We need to be talking about that, and fundamentally like your rights and your ability to be free and make the decisions that you want. And that's a little rambly. Does that answer your question, Don?
No, it answers my question, but
Okay.
I actually do think that there's much more to talk about when it comes to this. I want to talk about all of those things that you mentioned between you and I when we have another conversation. And I also want to delve in a little bit more about Washington, D.C. and what's happening, because this is also extremely concerning that they're putting members of the military on streets and basically, again, robbing people of their due rights process, their constitutional rights by saying, oh, hey, what are you doing on this porch? I live here. Where's your ID? That should not happen in an American city. That should not happen, but we're allowing it to. But Mike,
Have you seen this video of members
guy
of the military?
smoking?
Not the guy smoking, but have you seen where there was like 6 or 7 federal agents that were just like wearing like big vests and camo, and they were just walking down the empty streets in Georgetown?
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Like,
In Georgetown.
What the fuck are we doing?
And who's paying for all of this?
Right. We are. And by the way, those federal agents are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is taking on federal crimes, white collar crime, terrorism, drug trafficking, sex trafficking. That's what their jobs are. So they're not out there doing that stuff, which, by the way, it's not lost on me that Donald Trump has pardoned a lot of people who are guilty of those crimes.
You were reading my mind. I was just going to say we could have used all of that help on January 6th, and perhaps the criminals who invaded the Capitol and spread feces and urine on that Capitol and graffiti, perhaps we wouldn't be in this position, especially now when he has pardoned the criminals that he has been promising that he's going to put in jail.
Not to forget, too, that Kash Patel has been purging people out of the FBI because they're not loyal to Donald Trump, because they investigated people on January 6th. They investigated Donald Trump. He's firing them for doing their job, which means they're less safe because there's fewer federal agents trying to stop very violent federal criminals who are trying to hurt us, most likely terrorists and drug traffickers, sex traffickers. Sorry.
Right on, Mike Nellis. Thank you, sir. To be continued. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.